Hello and welcome to another episode of A Brief History. Today's episode, Chrono Trigger. Ready, set, go.
Somewhere in the US, I'm guessing here, 1992, Squaresoft game developers Hironobu Sakaguchi and Yuji Horii, alongside manga artist Akira Toriyama, teamed up to create a new game the likes of which had never been done before. After about a year of mulling over the idea, our trio solidified their concept and put together a development team to begin work on the project in early 1993. The team was spearheaded by producer Kazuhiko Aoki and directors Akihiko Matsui, Yoshinori Kitase, and Takashi Tokita. Sakaguchi acted as the game's designer, while Toriyama took on the role of lead artist, and Horii co-wrote the game alongside its directors. Did it! Nailed it!
Rather than creating a new entry in an already established franchise such as Final Fantasy, Squaresoft instead opted to make this title an original game, taking advantage of the creative freedom that came with that decision.
What's your favorite idea?
And all of this came to fruition when this new IP was revealed to the public as Chrono Trigger, a fantasy RPG released exclusively on the Super Nintendo in Japan on March 11th, 1995, and in North America on August 22nd, 1995. The plot of Chrono Trigger saw players taking the role of Goku, Chrono, who, through a series of unfortunate events, gets sent back in time, saves a queen from a frogman named Frog, gets falsely arrested and sentenced to death, escapes, and travels to a post-apocalyptic future where the world was destroyed in the distant year of 1999. I was alive back then, you know? It's amazing the sort of historic events you look over when you're, 3.
Anyway, Chrono and his ever-expanding party of frogs, robots, and prehistoric cave women must now travel through time and space in order to save their world. This was mainly done by exploring vast and varied environments and fighting a wide range of different enemies. Now, in other traditional RPGs, the gameplay is often split into two pieces: world exploration and turn-based battles, with clear and distinct differences in their presentation. But Chrono Trigger stood out from the crowd by merging the world exploration and turn-based battles into a single, smooth, and cohesive experience.
The game took place entirely from an overhead perspective, ditching random encounters and static battle screens in favor of outing enemies on the world map and allowing players to initiate battles simply by approaching them, fighting them where they found them. Basically, Chrono Trigger sat comfortably between Final Fantasy's turn-based system and Secret of Mana's real-time battles, and it was cool.
Also, did I mention that this game has like 8,000 endings? Seriously, completionists beware. If you want to see everything Chrono Trigger has to offer, one playthrough won't be enough. Oh no, this game comes prepared with around like 13 different endings, so it's gonna be a bit of work to get that 100% save file.
But I digress.
Upon its release, Chrono Trigger more or less became an instant hit, receiving critical acclaim and becoming one of the best-selling games of 1995. The game is now viewed not only as one of the best Super Nintendo games of all time, but one of the greatest video games ever made.
And of course, being the hit debut of a new IP from the same company who brought us about 44 Dragon Quest games and 93 Final Fantasy titles, Chrono Trigger quickly saw sequel after sequel, each one more expansive and more graphically intense than the rest. Who am I kidding? Square didn't do crap with the Chrono franchise for years.
Okay, so between 1995 and 1996, Square did release a handful of Chrono Trigger-related spin-offs and add-ons for the Super Famicom Satellaview. These included Chrono Trigger Jet Bike Special, a racing spin-off, the Chrono Trigger Character Library, Music Library, and most notably, a visual novel known as Radical Dreamers. Written and directed by Masato Kato, Radical Dreamers was developed as a means of tying up loose ends left by the original story, and similar to its predecessor, it featured 3 different endings.
Really? You make a game with 13 different endings and then say it didn't end cohesively. And then you make a new game specifically to tie up said loose ends and you still include multiple endings. What? I'm sorry, maybe I'm just not following the logic here. And apparently neither did Masato Kato, who decided, you know what, Radical Dreamers wasn't quite good enough. Let's try it all again, but this time let's do it properly.
More proper. More proper? More proper!
And thus, a few years later, a full-fledged follow-up entered into development and was released as Chrono Cross, a PlayStation exclusive released in Japan on November 18th, 1999, and in North America on August 15th, 2000.
While neither a direct sequel to Chrono Trigger nor an exact remake of Radical Dreamers, Chrono Cross mixed together elements of both, bringing an expanded version of the Radical Dreamers story to the world exploration and combat of Chrono Trigger. Now, that wasn't to say there weren't differences. None of the key developers from Chrono Trigger returned, the title featured completely 3D graphics, and several changes were made to its predecessor's formula. While enemies are still visible on the overworld and battles only begin when players initiate them, the battles themselves, understandably, did not take place on the world map. Instead, the two sections were separated, with battles taking place in more arena-esque environments.
While Chrono Cross was technically a follow-up to Chrono Trigger, the game's handlers made sure that it stood as its own entity. The combat was different, the story was different, and even the art was different. Featuring the gorgeous oh my gosh, do you say any Japanese names in your sections? You say one. Yep. You literally say one. Screw you, writer. Screw you. featuring the gorgeous work of Yasuyuki Hone and Nobuteru Yuki. And it was this different approach that won the title large amounts of critical acclaim and also some discontent among fans who felt it was a bit too radical of a departure from its predecessor. But in the end, Chrono Cross was ultimately another critical success for Squaresoft that has widely been accepted as a worthy successor to Chrono Trigger.
So by the turn of the century, the Chrono series had two incredibly unique and well-reviewed games under its belt, and fans were absolutely ready for more. And yeah, that's pretty much it. There were the two games and fans want more, but have most likely accepted the fact that they will probably never see a new Chrono game, at least not for a very, very long time. Seriously, since the release of Chrono Cross, Square has put out 4 main series Dragon Quest games, 6 main series Final Fantasy games, and like 8 Kingdom Hearts games. What has Chrono gotten in that time span? Ports.
Yup. Ports. Specifically ports of the original Chrono Trigger for PlayStation, Nintendo DS, and mobile devices in 2001, 2008, and 2011 respectively. Now, while some of these ports did include a few extras like gameplay modes, levels, endings, and even fully animated cutscenes from Akira Toriyama and Toei Animation, that doesn't make up for the fact that we still haven't seen anything legitimately new from the Chrono series since the start of the new millennium. There was a brief glimmer of hope in 2001 when Square trademarked the name Chrono Break twice. Once in the United States spelled B-R-E-A-K, and again in Japan spelled B-R-A-K-E. Unfortunately, the US trademark was dropped in 2003, and nothing has been done with the Japanese trademark. And due to this absence, a number of fan projects began to pop up, all of which ended with cease and desist letters issued from Square. So sad. Maybe once they finish Final Fantasy VII Remake.
So for the time being, the Chrono series has been completely dormant for around 16 years now, which for a series as critically acclaimed as Chrono and a company as sequel-heavy as Square is pretty surprising. Now, Square has recently attempted to recapture the magic with games like I Am Setsuna, but that doesn't change the fact that there was no sign of a true third Chrono game anywhere in sight. But despite its short lifespan, the Chrono series still managed to boast what are considered 2 of the greatest RPGs of all time and has found its longevity in its own fan base. Quite an accomplishment considering the sheer amount of competition it had to deal with. When you think about it, the Chrono series is kinda like the middle child of the Square RPG family, ultimately overshadowed by its older siblings Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, and even its kid brother Kingdom Hearts.
In retrospect, between their gripping stories, engaging gameplay, and beautiful visuals, the Chrono games accomplished exactly what they were made to do: provide players with distinct and exciting adventures that were unlike anything else at the time. And their newfound cult classic status ultimately stands as proof that even the most short-lived of franchises can go on to make an impact that will well outlive the games themselves. Thanks for watching, guys. DFTBA. But seriously, man, this makes me sad. One, because you made me, this episode made me sad. One, because you made me say all the Japanese names, literally all of the Japanese names. But two, God, Chrono Trigger is so good. Ugh, I wish there was another game. Square, what are you doing? Ugh, so disappointing. So disappointing. Anyway, audio over. Done, Ryder, done. We're done here. Screw you making me pronounce all the Japanese names.